Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Players NIL podcast. My special guest today, Miss Ashley Wick. Ashley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's great to be here.
Well, we just had a little preamble, so I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. But I have to abide by my rules, and my rules are that we need to know a little bit about your background and your history. And we use two words, sports, right, and athletics. Sports is the fandom part of your childhood, who you followed, who you went to games with, who impressed you, who guided you. And athletics would be the participation part. And I know that you participated at a high level in college. So just give us a quick couple minutes or a couple quick responses to who's Ashley Wick, the child, the young athlete, the young sports fan. Let us peek inside a little bit.
So great. Happy to. Yeah. Well, now that we're really in the middle of summer, it reminds me of all the tennis camps that I attended as a kid. And just, I was a really busy kid and I played tennis and soccer. And my first love was actually horseback riding. And so I was always on a court or a field of some kind. And I guess that's not surprising in some ways because my dad was an uber athlete. He went to Yale. He played football. He's an excellent tennis player. And so that really bleeds into the next question, which was like who I was as a fan. And the roots of the bond with my dad were really formed around sports. And I grew up in San Francisco, California. And that was a time when sports were played at Candlestick Park. I don't know if you've been there or not, but back in the day, it was watching the Giants and Will Clark. And it was going to see Joe Montana play for the 49ers. And so my love of sports was really fostered by my dad. My experience playing collegiate sports at Division I at Duke University was a little bit of a surprise, and we can talk about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the principles of our business is how do you use athletics to better your life? And so, if I'm drawing some conclusions from your story, there were life lessons there. There were relationships that were built. There were opportunities that were created. Is that correct?
Oh gosh, I mean, we could talk for a long time about that. But just, following the thread of the surprise of playing Division I sports. I mean, I don't think it was surprising for me. I really had the appetite for that, but I didn't start playing lacrosse until I was a freshman in high school. So that was when I discovered it really late. And along the way, there were a few setbacks. And I'm just thinking about a time that my dad and I went to a recruiting meeting with, at that time, the coach of Dartmouth, which was my first choice. And essentially, the message that was communicated in that meeting was that you're not D1 material. And that was painful to hear. And the irony is that I did become a D1 athlete. I went to Duke and I was recruited based on my athleticism, not necessarily my stick skills at that time, but I was really fast and I was tall and I was a good athlete. And when we played Dartmouth 2 years later, I scored I think the winning goal or a goal before the winning goal. And so one of the lessons that I've learned, and unfortunately I've had to learn this a few times, but that there are going to be many people in life that don't necessarily know what you're capable of. And so I think bottom line, athletics has taught me so many things and I'll share more. But one of the biggest lessons was really listening to my own intuition. And ultimately how athletics has shaped me is that it's helped cultivate my inner coach. It's taught me both internal and external leadership skills. But really like what it means to be resilient on your own terms and having the capacity to stay steady and centered, no matter what happens out there, no matter what someone tells you you're not capable of, or that you don't belong here. Essentially, it's just like having access to a greater range of choices when you're under stress, which has informed, my work life, my family life, raising children and being in relationship. So, I would say that was was a major lesson. Can I keep talking? I have more.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. On the leadership front, I would say another big lesson that I learned was that the sum is greater than the parts. And I think one of the reasons we're talking now is that you listened to a Instagram live that I shared, or a reel that I shared, about an influential moment when I was at Duke playing lacrosse, and our brilliant coach, Kirsten Kimmel, brought in a specialist in mindset. And they gave us this book, which I highly recommend to everyone, which is called Thinking Body, Dancing Mind. And it is a brilliant book for athletes and business and life, but it combines Western and Eastern thinking, specifically Taoism. And our coach at that time had all the players, the whole team, get into the formation of a car. So the analogy was that we are all instrumental parts of the team, and we have to really understand what our gifts are and leverage them, but we're all parts. And this team was not built on a few star players that were going to carry everyone else. It was really built on, which is why I went, fantastic athletes. And everyone had their own strength, and it was about understanding what yours was and what role you played, but that we all really needed to take care of each other so that all ships rose. And so that was a really important lesson for me and has informed my coaching work now. I built a workshop called the InGENIUS Life, which is all about being able to articulate and understand your gifts, what makes you feel in flow, and who you are at your essence when you're working at your highest and best. So that was just, yeah, really important. I think in sports, when you're playing team sports, you have a responsibility to show up as your best self, but also to contribute to your teammates' success. And so yeah, that was instrumental, and I think still informs the way that I move through the world today, which is like when we're connected to something larger than ourselves, whether that's teammates or something spiritual or a greater goal for impact in the world, it's more rewarding, and we stay motivated for longer because there's an intrinsic goal attached to it.
Wow, there's a lot of heavy stuff right there, but I get it. And it embodies the first principle of our company, and that is, how do you use athletics to better your life? And congratulations on that journey. I'm sure it never ends. It continues. And because of that, the lacrosse ended, and sports end for everyone. Even Tom Brady retired eventually. Mm-hmm. And so the second pillar of our business, and this just segues into what you're doing today, is once that career is over, how do you use athletics to better the lives of the people around you? And it doesn't mean that it has to be through sports. It could be through these things that you've learned, these things that you've developed, these attitudes, this leadership, and this transformative leadership coach career that you have. So tell us a little bit about how you brought all of those experiences into what you're currently working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm playing sports recreationally now, Mark, not professionally in any capacity. But I'm really enjoying my time playing tennis, and now my younger daughters are playing lacrosse. So I'm a super fan on the sidelines. But in a lot of ways, I stepped out of that player role and into a coach role. I'm a transformational leadership coach, and I work with mainly creative men and women entrepreneurs who are interested in unlocking more of their potential and playing a bigger game in their life and work. And so, gosh, it's really endless, but I would say that mindset is a huge part of the work that we do. And that is because our beliefs are so powerful. As you probably know, when you get up in the morning and the first thing that you think is, oh gosh, I'm so tired, I didn't sleep well last night, that creates a cascading effect of certain, less powerful thoughts and some emotions that lead to either action or, inaction. And that creates the results of your life. So if you were going to look at that sort of psychological system, if you will, which is Psychology 101, that our beliefs inform our thoughts and our emotions, and then what we do with our lives. It's pretty critical to understand what you believe about yourself and what you believe about the world. So, when I talk about honing my inner coach, what I'm really speaking to is understanding our mindsets and building our self-awareness. And a lot of things stem from there. So one of the things that I learned in sports, playing lacrosse at Duke, was the power of visualization. And that is because we can't build what we can't feel or see. And oftentimes in life and business and in athletics, especially, I'm sure some of your clients and the athletes there, they've never launched a podcast before, they've never had an endorsement contract. And so there's real power in using visualization as a tool to act as if. So to imitate a person or an animal, or bring in an energy that embodies the qualities that you desire, so that you can step into what I like to call your future self, that's already accomplished the things that you want to do. Because what we focus on grows. Where we place our attention is so important. There's this great sort of just little quotes like, how I see me, I will be. And so I think that's critical as it relates to anyone who's interested in expanding their potential and reaching their goals. And one of my favorite authors is Gay Hendricks. And I love this quote too. He says, "The only relevant question is whether you will let it be possible for you." And I like to think that my role as coach is like, I'm a possibilicist, or, something like that. I am holding space for the possibility of you being, the greatest version of yourself.
So I think, one of the transformations in my life has been my jump from high school athlete, college athlete, parent of athletes, cheerleader, to many, many athletes in many sports. We're very fortunate to know kids that went to the Olympics, kids that played Division I sports, won national championships, high level professional athletes.
Yeah.
And as my kids have grown, Ashley, I've watched my kids and other kids go through this transformation from childhood sports to, a little bit more competitive high school sports, to college sports, professional sports. And the one thing that's consistent is they're all known as athletes. Everyone knows them because of how fast they ran, how far they jumped, how high they jumped, how fast they skied, how hard they threw the ball, whatever it may be. And that becomes their persona. That becomes who they are. And the Players NIL is evolving now to become a more well-rounded educational company, because I see kids who fall off the cliff when the sports stop. So my challenge to kids is, what are you going to do when the ball stops bouncing? It's a figurative, rhetorical question. But the point is, who are you as a person besides what your persona is to the public, right? And how do you take advantage of that to create this balance and do these things that are really important to you? There's so many kids that are creative. There's so many kids that are entrepreneurial, that have interests outside of sports, but they've been told that they're really great athletes. They've been rewarded for being really great athletes. They've been told how much sacrifice the family has made to go to these tournaments, to get the best coach, to get
so much pressure.
The pressure. And so when that sport is taken away, when that experience, when that persona is taken away, I ask the rhetorical question again, is if you disappeared today, Ashley, would anyone care tomorrow? What's your legacy? What have you built? So tell me, with that
That's
thought,
some tough love, Mark.
Those are tough things, but that's the reality. But I believe it, right? So with that mindset and with the transformative coaching that you do, what can we do to help young athletes? What can we do to get more balance in their life?
Oh, it's such a great question. And I think it really depends on the person. But, I'm fortunate in the sense that I'm poly-passionate. I really am just drawn to a number of different activities. And, and pursuits that make my life feel really alive and full. And part of my issue has been just to stay focused, really, because I can get so distracted. And a lot of my clients feel that way too. But I think of it almost like, having juggling, like having a lot of balls in the air in a good way, actually. It's not that you have to keep them all up in the air, but there's ways to flex into different parts of your life depending on what's going well and what's not. And having that kind of flexibility and seeing yourself as a multidimensional person beyond sports is, as you're saying, really critical. So how do you do that? You just develop different interests and get curious. I think curiosity, it's an overused word, but when, from a biological standpoint in neuroscience, we can't be curious and in fear or under pressure or under attack or feeling protective of ourselves at the same time. So the minute you get curious about an activity, maybe it's something intellectual, maybe it's something religious, who knows, anything, and create community in those spaces, then there's that other dimension in your life. So I think staying really curious is important. And then, I have firsthand experience. I actually, I made the really hard decision to stop playing lacrosse my senior year. And I think for some athletes, it's really important to know when to let go. And for me, that was a moment when my heart was no longer leading. And being true to yourself in the face of disappointing other people and staying in alignment with who you are is so important. And for me, that was hard because I was such a people pleaser. So again, developing that connection to oneself and the intuition about what's really best for you, I think is also critical just in the timing of all of that. Because for some of these kids, I imagine that's really all that they know is, that identity as being an athlete, but there's so much more to them. And so what's interesting is too, that we think in such black and white terms that when that era of athletics ends, that we end with it. There's an enmeshment in our role as an athlete and who we are. But what I've found is that, when something ends, and there's all this incredible space to create anew. And thank God for the work that you're doing, Mark, because you support people in understanding what that is and exploring different opportunities. But I think, seeing yourself as a multidimensional person and leaning into that is key.
I think that's a great answer, and I love it. And I will just tell you from firsthand experience as a parent, it's easy to go into a social setting and tell everyone my daughter is Ashley Wick and she's a lacrosse player at Duke. That becomes the descriptive narrative, right? Because it's what people relate to. And also in America, we idolize athletes. So,
and what you value.
Yeah, and it's not as exciting to say Ashley Wick and she's studying neuroscience at Duke and she's a nerd in the science lab. It's just not as attractive. The story isn't as good, right? But I think as parents, we need to fight for equality of who the person really is, that child that you're raising.
Well, and not only what they're doing, but who they be, meaning how do they move in the world? Who are they being? Oh, my daughter who is, developed incredible compassion for blah, 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 or, those qualities of what we do so often trump the qualities of who we be.
Getting ready to speak to a group tonight. It's a group of 25 of the top boys high school lacrosse players in the country in the class of 25. So they're rising seniors, class of 25. It's in association with some work I'm doing with a charitable organization called Headstrong, which is a cancer awareness group.
Yes.
And I'm going to speak to those kids and their parents tonight. And I remember when my son was a junior in high school, trying to figure out what his athletic future was and what being defined as an athlete. I, as a parent, was being defined by his athletic success.
Right.
And so I really find myself conflicted with what I did and how I acted with what I know today and what I know we should be saying and should be doing.
What
And
was the gap, Mark? Like what's different now?
well, I saw all those kids that my kids competed with and played with that when the careers ended athletically, they were lost. I saw
Yeah.
kids with national championships that didn't have a job. 52% of college graduates today are underemployed. Okay.
Mm,
And I saw kids that, went back at home and vegetated on their parents' couch because they didn't have any goals, they didn't have any dreams. They did, but they were never allowed to express them.
mm.
And so that was transformative for me. We keep using that word. And now doing the work that I do, I meet all these young kids. And I don't want to be the old fuddy-duddy to say that, I know more than you because I lived longer. But I do know a lot. I've been through a lot and I made all the mistakes. And I'll just give you this last bit and then I want you to comment on it. So one of my parenting philosophies is called the middle of the road. And, life is like going down a highway and parenting is going down the parenting highway. And, when everything's running smooth and everything's good, you're going down the middle of the road, everything's great. On one side are parents that are out of control and crazy, and we know all about that. We know who they are. The craziness, the screaming on the sidelines, the
The
eccentric behavior,
cowbells.
the cowbells, whatever it may be. On the other side of the road are the parents that don't care, that never show up, that are absentee,
Mm,
that don't support
mm,
their kids. And I think in reality, all parents try to stay in the middle of the road, but we drift off. We go to one shoulder or the other.
We're
But
human.
good parenting, good parents or parents that care, they figure out how to get back to the middle of the road. Bad parents go to one side or the other and they don't come back. And it profoundly affects their children. So with that thought and your closing comments, tell us a little bit about, how you're addressing your kids, how you're addressing young people today, given that they were raised as celebrity athletes, and
Mm,
some advice for parents out there that are going to listen to this.
you bet. Um, well, I don't believe in good and bad. So I'll start there in the sense that we've all been shaped by our experiences in life and we react to things based on that kind of conditioning. So I have a lot of compassion actually for those parents on the side of the field who are ecstatic and even the parents that are screaming at their kids because who knows how they were treated as young adults and athletes themselves. So we do what we know. But when you ask, how do I like hold this conversation of athleticism with my own children? Well, they're young, they're 9 and 7 right now. And I'm reminded of this poem by the author Cahill Gibran. It's called On Children. And he describes really beautifully this idea that as parents, we're really just there to be a steady bow, and the children are our arrows, and we just have to stay steady, and we can point the bow in a certain direction, but the arrow is going to fly wherever it flies. And so I'm not I'm controlling in certain ways, but less controlling in this department because what I found is when I control my children, it doesn't work out very well. There's a lot of resistance, and that's not fun for anyone to be around. And I'm again back to curiosity. Like when I step into that place of awe and wonder, when you're watching your children discover something that they like to do, and that, oh my gosh, it's even better when they're really good at it naturally, when there's a gift there. I just got goosebumps thinking about it. That's really the point of sports for me. The purpose of it is, yes, to like develop skills, but the greater purpose when sports go away, because they will at some point in your life, they disappear, is the foundation that they've built inside of you and that kind of confidence and resilience and ability to work in teams and to collaborate and all those soft skills that you develop as an athlete serve you for a lifetime. And one other thing I'll say, I think, I was lucky to have parents that were just interested in me really having fun out there and developing those soft skills. And I think that where where we get in trouble is when we put so much pressure and high expectations on our children, and possibilities are always greater without sky high expectations. And so I guess what I would share to anyone listening to this episode who's struggling with this, or as a parent, just do your best to enjoy the excitement and the joy of either performing or watching your children perform and learn and grow in that present moment. Just allowing those intrinsic benefits of being out on the field, mentally and physically, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, those impossible expectations are the thief of joy, and they can be career ruining. And so focusing on those good feelings that attracted you to the sport in the first place is the advice that I would give, because when you shoot for the sun and you fall short, you're still one of the stars. So just the fact that you're out there on the field, in my mind, is good enough. Like, you're participating, you're playing.
Well, it's a drop the mic moment. It's great answers. Ashley, if people want to learn more about your business and your career guidance, where can they find you? How can they find you?
Yeah, well, my website is old and under construction, but the best way to find me right now
That's
is
a funny name.
it's on. I know, it's the honest truth. It's like the cobbler's shoes. It's not been a priority, but you can find me on Instagram. It's at Ashley Wick. My website is wickandco.com. And yes, I'd love, to connect in any way, whether that's through my newsletter or DM me if you're interested in learning more about coaching and how I might be able to support you. Any questions are welcome.
Great. Ashley, thank you for your time and your words of wisdom and your knowledge. I appreciate it. I learned something today, and I think our audience will as well.
Thank you so much.